Good morning. Happy Martin Luther King Day. And I'm going to talk on this video about China and about Australia. Last night the Chinese reported their slowest GDP growth ever, if you can even believe them. But I've been looking at graphs all morning, and the individual numbers don't add up to the aggregate number that they're producing. So I would probably suspect that China's probably rolling into a recession right now, and they're in a world of hurt, and they're a hurt locker. And and as China goes, I'm going to show you a number of nations that are going to go with it. And the interesting thing here, because it ties, is that the slowest growth here, and the Guardian positions it as because of the trade war with the U.S. This is why you can't ever listen to the pundits on TV. They talk about that trade war will hurt the United States more than it's going to hurt China. Well, it's really hurting China, and the U.S. we don't even notice it. It's just like the furloughed federal workers. Not affecting my life at all, and so this situation with China is being poo-pooed. And when China goes, look, this is a command and control economy. There's no flexibility. People are going to be frozen stiff in terms of making decisions because Xi Jinping has become, basically the 21st century version of Mao. And he's been clearing out private companies, and he's been supporting state-controlled ones. And they have a different mindset on how to run an economy, and they don't react well to rapid changes. And so China over the next 2 years, they're going to bring in the next Great Depression. I've always been of the belief that China today was America in the 20s. And America today was the Great Britain of the 20s. And people need to do their homework on this. China is going to collapse like America collapsed. You cannot have an extremely export-oriented country survive economically when the world goes into a major slowdown. And Britain, during the 20s, was recovering from World War I, and they were retrenching. And so they were coming back in from empire. They had basically, the United States is geographically very, very, has a lot of advantages. And Britain did in the sense that they had a lot of colonies. And so they could trade within themselves. And the thing about when you have these economic depressions is that if you rely on trade, you have trade partner trust. Well, Britain didn't have that issue. And in fact, in the 30s, London real estate prices went higher. So go figure. And I think the same thing's going to happen in the U.S. We need very little from the outside world. And what we can't get with a few strategic nations and relationships, we can. Doesn't mean that we're not going to go into recession or anything like that. But we'll survive it just fine. We can feed ourselves. We can energize ourselves. Political will for enough strategic metals. And you bring jobs back home. You create velocity. You create inflation. So that's a story for another day, and that's happening. And people have been poo-pooing that and thinking that we're going to collapse. The dollar's going to get stronger, guys, not weaker. But gold will get stronger against the dollar. But with China, on the other hand, there's a different problem for people. And here's the nations that are attached to the China bubble, and they're in a world of hurt, and you can see it. So you got Australia, number one, is very, very, very dependent on the economic strength because they provide a lot of the raw materials. Well, they're overproducing steel, they're overproducing cars, they're overproducing everything there. And then you're starting to see those imports starting to fall because their exports are falling in China. And I'll show you the Australian dollar in a second. And then you got Germany. Germany's recording their lowest GDP growth too. There's no accident to this. The United States was kind of like the conveyor belt. When we stopped buying from the Chinese, okay, so it affects Australia, affects Germany, because Germany provides all the machine tools to the Chinese until they steal all the technology from them and then try to just do it on their own. But right now, Germany is a linchpin for the economic ladder rise of China because they provided all the high-tech manufacturing equipment. Okay, United States, you can skip United States. Most of the stuff we send to China, they still have to buy. They need to eat. 20% of our imports, our exports to China are food. And they're going to have to buy it, especially as we go into a global solar minimum. You got Japan, and then South Korea is reporting also extremely slow growth. So it's happening. These people got to be scared out of their minds. And China can't get out of its own way. People don't realize the Chinese are aging faster than any other nation on earth. They have no social safety net. Okay? They're manufacturing heavy. The people are still very poor. The social inequality is as bad as anywhere else in the world. And the people came out of the countryside in these cities, and they have millions of people as they started having massive layoffs. It's going to be a nightmare for them. And then here's the Australian dollar, and I'll end with this. Doesn't look so hot. It's been downtrending. And I saw something pretty interesting as I was flipping around. It's even falling against Bitcoin. So which I thought was pretty interesting. And that's what happens, when we talk about cryptocurrencies, because we're U.S.-centric, business at Trade Genius, is that, we look at everything through the lens of the dollar, is that, people that have currencies that are at risk, you can quickly get your wealth out of the country if you can transfer it into a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Litecoin or etc. And you protect yourself. Can you imagine if you had, when Venezuela was doing well? I'll use Turkey as a better example because I understand the exchange rate better. Their exchange rate against the dollar fell by half. If you converted your cash reserves into Bitcoin when that thing started to fall, Bitcoin has risen in value against the Turkish lira, and you protected your wealth. And you're going to see more and more of that as most of these currencies start to roll. The one you're going to watch is when Bitcoin goes against the dollar and gold goes against the dollar, then all the currencies are hooked, and it's all over for them. And that's what you got to watch for. And so, anyway, I thought you'd find this interesting. I have a lot of things to talk about. There's so much going on in the world right now. So many strategic moves are happening, and people really need to pay attention. And I'm going to talk about the industrial metals on my next video. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. If you'd like to trade with us, go to tradelikeagenius.com. We have some specials running right now to the midnight tonight. Great prices, great deal. We'll help you make money. Bye-bye.